Let's go ahead and bring in Steiner Sports CEO, Brandon Steiner.
One of the country's top memorabilia mogul.
I have an unbelievable guest, Brandon Steiner.
Brandon's second to none.
Welcome back. I told you yesterday, I know yesterday was a crazy day. I know if you were following us anyway, but I told you we had a special guest, and I lied because it really is an understatement. And especially if you're on the Project X, we have so much ground to cover. If you have an idea, a concept, a business. I'm with Joe Plumeri, who former CEO of Citi, Shearson Lehman, entrepreneur, to say the least, Trenton Thunder, one of the owner. Philanthropist. The man, there's very few stones that he hasn't turned over. That's the kind of person he is. And what I love about Joe is that he's not unwilling to share his knowledge. If you follow him on his Facebook page, great posts. But pleasure to have you here today, Joe. I'm a huge fan. I've been stealing all your material too.
I'm glad. And by the way, I'm still looking for stones to turn over.
Yeah.
That's the whole essence of life. Looking for stones to turn over. That's me.
I did a blog last week, and I love the line you hit me with. We were having lunch, and you hit me with, forget about these think tanks. I want to do tank.
That's right.
And I said, that's the essence of this program.
That's exactly right. And what came out of that, all of these companies I ever ran, I was surrounded by MBAs. Nothing wrong with MBAs. I like MBAs, so that's not the problem. But everybody thinks strategically, and I said, I want to know people who think execution. I want to do it. I don't want to think about it. I want to do it. So I've always been a person, when I ran all these companies, was think less about strategy and more about execution. And one day I was giving a speech and I said, execution eats strategy for lunch. And there was a big article in the London Times about Plumeri says execution
I
eats
love
strategy
that.
for lunch. And that became the theme song. And then next day there was a cartoon of me eating lunch. You come up with this stuff, because you're excited about it.
And an MBA thing is all about the strategy, forecasting, planning, and then
modeling.
Yeah.
I love the modeling thing. That's, whoa. Make decisions on modeling. Come on, where's your gut come from? Where's your heart come from? And I'm a big.
You have a question for Joe? You want to phone in? Please message in right below, and we'll take some calls in a few minutes. Joe, a bunch of things I want to talk to you about. The opioids.
Right.
It's a hot button. And I know we're going to talk business. I know you have so many business stories. I don't know if we have enough hours in the day to cover them because they're all great learning lessons. A lot of people out there trying to figure out how to get their idea from square one to two. But let's talk about opioids. We were having lunch a couple weeks ago,
right.
And it's a concept that seems to be now on people's minds, that there's a serious, serious problem out there. Talk to me about it.
I think it's the most serious thing that we have to deal with in our culture, because it's affecting the culture of this country, and it affects every fiber of what goes on in this country. It affects education. It affects crime. It affects families. It affects the infrastructure of the culture of this country. And 175 people are dying a day of addiction. Most people who die under 50 die because of addiction and because of overdoses. That's how bad it is. It is the equivalent, worse than, you read about millions of dollars being poured into Harvey. We were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
And if I take all the people that died from Harvey, Irma, and Maria, 3 big hurricanes.
Tragic.
Does not eat, and all the money that was poured in appropriately. But understand that if I added the 3 hurricanes together, didn't equal the many deaths as death by addiction a day.
How many a day do you think?
175 people die a day of addiction.
A day?
175 a day.
A day.
In this country, yes.
Wow.
Now, if you want to do the math, that's about 40,000 people a year that die of addiction. I'll give you another stat. Cancer, which is a wretched disease, which is on everybody's mind. Everybody's mind. About 19 million people are affected by cancer. 40 million people are affected by addiction. 40 million. So what we have on our hands are people that are now aware of addiction, but we haven't gotten back to doing something about it. We got to do something
Less
about
strategy,
it.
more
absolution.
execution.
And we talk about, doing this and working with the pharmaceuticals and the legislature and the pharmaceutical and all the kind. Actually, somebody's got to get together and take a leadership role because this is an emotional issue. I'm tired of watching parents bury kids, and I'm tired of not having kids lead a full life. That's what's going on here. We don't have to worry about North Korea or Russia or China. We're going to kill ourselves. That's what's happening here. And it's a cultural issue that you can tell how emotional I am about it because it's an emotional issue. So that everybody knows I lost my own son of addiction 10 years ago. Matter of fact, it was 10 years ago, November the 6th. And it's an emotional issue. And the worst thing that could ever happen to me, nothing could happen to me worse than having to bury your child. That's not the order of things, Brandon. The order of things is the reverse of that. Because that's growth, and you raise your children and you grow old, and your children hopefully do well because of your guidance. And then when it's time for you to go, they bury you, and then they have your own children. That's the course of life.
Yes, it is.
That's the process of life. And that process is being inverted.
So talk to me about, and obviously this is a big issue to you.
Yes.
You've run some really big companies. You've made money. You've worked with government. There's been some crises that happen in this country you've been in the middle of.
Right.
I understand now why you picked this one, but what's the can do? I mean, if you're out there, if you have an idea, please message in your feedback about this issue because we want to hear feedback. But what's the can do part here? I mean, we're talking about it. You seem passionate. We're now into this conversation. What do you?
I think that what has to happen in this country is that for some reason there's not a breakthrough. There's an awareness, but there's not a breakthrough. The reason I gave you the stats about cancer and addiction is not to say that money shouldn't be given to cancer. We have baseball players wearing pink. We have pink ribbons. We have pink cleats on football players, pink, great. That's awareness where you're doing something about it, and the money being put into research. And I think
there should be that kind of awareness.
I think it's wonderful. That's where we need to be. And I don't know whether it's a purple something that has to do with addiction, but it's got to rise to that level.
You think we look at addicts as failures?
I think
or we look down on. We look down.
There's
a stigma,
and I think that lots of parents are afraid to admit that their child might be affected by it. And believe me, they're affected by it. 1 in 10 eighth graders have tried some sort of an opioid or marijuana.
Eighth grade?
Eighth grade, 1 out of 10. So you're dealing with an adolescent issue here that's big. You got states legalizing marijuana, which I'm totally against. It's a gateway drug, and it fries your brain. It's as simple as that. And now they do it in a way where it's in a vape, so you can't smell it. And states are doing it, whether it's because they don't think it's terrible for you or because there's big revenue that's associated.
Probably the big revenue associated with it. It's big business, big money.
Yeah, I mean, so
is this not the last we're going to be hearing from you?
No,
I know that we're putting together a bunch of people together on this. But if you're interested in getting involved with this concept, we want to hear from you. Tell us your feedback. Tell us your connection to this, because we're not in only the think tank mode. We're in the do tank mode.
I want to do something about this. I mean, I'm dedicating myself. I'm the executive chairman of CASA, which is the Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse. I'm in the process of writing a book to educate parents as to how to raise kids. But it goes much broader than that. We need to break through this awareness barrier that also has stigma associated with it. If towns do something about it, for example, then the town is looked upon as having a problem. So therefore, they don't do anything about it.
Nothing.
Go beyond that, man.
And it's not just in a bad neighborhood this is happening.
Are you kidding me? It's well beyond bad neighborhoods. It's in our society. And if you ask any of the kids that are in schools today, they'll tell you it's rampant.
Yeah, in my high school alone, like they're doing like drug busts occasionally. Like it's crazy the amount of drug use and stuff going on just in our high school alone.
Really? And you live in a pretty upscale, right?
Pretty nice area, yeah. Right? And it's like, I think besides this past year, every year prior, somebody from the schools died from like a drug overdose.
Think about that. And you're
and
talking about high school, right?
Yeah. He's in high school.
And he's not. And a year.
He's a crack intern.
A year. And what
Jesse.
would you say, just as an example of if you got how many kids in your school?
I think there's 1,500 probably.
Okay, 1,500. Take a guess, just a guess, and it's not a statistic, but I'm just curious because I'm glad you brought that up. How many of the 1,500 have tried some sort of a drug, whether it be an opioid, a marijuana, or something associated to what we would define as drug?
I would say definitely over 50%, and it's getting younger too. I've realized, like, when I first entered the school, it was mostly upperclassmen, but now it's like freshmen.
50%.
At least.
That's
I'd say.
750
Are
people.
kids walking around your high school, not to incriminate anyone, but are they walking around stoned all day?
I mean, get the school sort of like, threatens but honestly, like, I think they just don't realize that it's like getting normal at the school. It's just terrible. But I think it's definitely 50% or more that have at least tried it, and probably 25% or more that do it on a consistent basis, like every week.
Now, if that's not, now we're talking about 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, whatever the case may be, 13, 14. Now, if that's the case now, and we have at CASA research that suggests that if you don't catch it now, then by the time they become 21, 22, etc., late adolescence, then the probability of becoming addicted and getting into cocaine and heroin and everything else is much greater. So that's what we're dealing with here.
Because now pretty much every one of the kids is vape. Like, if you walk into a school bathroom, it's full with kids just in the stalls, like, vaping.
Wow, really?
Because they're not going to do it in
So
hallways.
you're vaping marijuana.
They're doing, and then
because
that
they can't smell it.
nobody can smell it, and then it goes from there. Then on the weekends, they're actually doing stuff when they're not in
So
school.
you feeling pressure that to be involved in
I mean,
that,
I think
or?
it helps that I'm a senior, so, like, you don't feel that kind of prep. But if you were a freshman right now, I don't know what you'd be feeling if everyone's doing that and you're just trying. Because a lot of kids, like I saw there's some comments on peer pressure and stuff like that. But if you're trying to fit in as an underclassman, you don't know what to do, and everyone's just passing around like a vape, I don't know what you do.
So you got the pressure in schools, which is another form of bullying because they're getting bullied and doing it. And then you got the fact that it's happening, but the parents don't know it, and they think everything is cool and fine. And if parents did know it, they're not going to tell anybody because the stigmatization of the kid, and I see he's shaking his head, all of this, And
By the way, if you know someone that's got a problem, please like and share this. We want to hear from you. Please give us some feedback. We love to hear any of the comments. We're really actually on a mission. And I mentioned this, I think, last week. We're on a mission. Joe's going to lead this charge, and I'm on board, and we've got some really dynamic people.
We got our culture at stake here, Brandon.
I think this is
not,
worth the energy and time to make sure we get this word out.
This is our culture.
Yeah.
You listen to this young man, and this is not this is a typical, not atypical high school where this problem exists. And it gets worse when you get into the heartland and you get into this into rural areas because there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
And as a result, it gets worse.
It gets worse.
So if we're talking about X millions of high schoolers, you're talking about half of them that are doing drugs of some kind, of some form, whether it's opioids and they throw it in punch and they crack it up and they put it in, and it's liquefied, whatever the case may be. And so you're looking at a country that's on its way to people who are on drugs become less educated in the workforce, that are less productive. There's more crime, which puts more pressure on the economy, puts more pressure on our people being. Listen, our high schools. There used to be a time that in this country we were ranked number one in terms of high schoolers going to college. We are now ranked 19th in the world. We are now ranked 19th. If you take this statistic, where do you think we're going? So
we're good.
So my point is if you want to do something greater for the society that we live in, you got to handle this problem because it affects every aspect of our culture.
Okay, let's take a breath. First of all, if you know somebody, we'd love to hear from you. Please bring the feedback. You're going to hear a lot more from us on this movement. Not a lot of thinking, a lot of doing. So please, we're into an action mode right now. Joe, got to switch gears a little bit.
Yep.
Business. You're young. What do you tell the 20-year-old Joe Plumeri with everything now you've learned? If you can go back and talk to that 20-year-old with everything you know, what do you tell him?
Go play in traffic. Everybody says, and they think about that, they say, Joe Plumeri just said I should go get hit by a truck. I don't think you should go hit by a truck. What I mean is that in technology today, less and less people go meet people. Everything is done not face-to-face. Everything is done by technology. But even if you get on a site where you meet people, eharmony.com, eventually, ladies and gentlemen, you got to show up and see the person. Eventually. You can go on so long, but you got to see the person. So in my career, if I look at all of the nice things that have happened to me, all the nice things that happened to me is because I played in traffic, I showed up, I met people. I showed them who I was. I knocked on doors. I went to, I call it, I take the meeting. People invite me to meetings. I show up. People tell me to go someplace. I still do it. I'm still playing in traffic at 74 years old because it's exciting to go meet people, let them see who you are, find out what they want, see where there's a connection, see what can be done. And I don't think today people say it's hard to find people. I said, what do you want to do? And they said, I want to meet CEOs. I said, then go where CEOs go. And they said, where do they go? I said, they play golf at country clubs. Go be a caddy. I said, you know how long you're going to spend with a CEO being a caddy? 4 or 5 hours. You can't get in their office for 4 or 5 hours. Go carry a bag. Go wait on tables. Go do whatever you got to do. And they're startled by just some little thing like being a caddy for a CEO. I said, they're looking for caddies. Go make yourself a couple $100 or whatever the heck they pay. I happen to pay more. They should pay a lot more for caddies, by the way. But you get a kid driving a bag on a Saturday morning with Sunday morning. The CEOs are out there. You're listening to them talking about deals. You're listening to them talking about things. And you walk around the fairway, and the CEO, I do this, and I say to my caddy, you go to school, son? What do you do? And they tell me what they do. And after a while, spending 4 hours with the CEO of a company, that's cool. Go play in traffic. There's a lot of ways to do it.
Can't put a price tag on going out meeting people.
No, go
Can't
play
put
in
a
traffic.
price tag on it.
Matter of fact, I was proud. There's a column in the New York Times, used to be. The last column was 2 weeks ago, called The Corner Office.
Yeah.
And they interviewed me a lot of years ago. And they asked me that question. And I said, go play in traffic. And I told them all about how I started on Wall Street by knocking on Sandy Weil's door. And I thought it was a law firm. It turned out to be a brokerage firm. Kerberlin Weil turned out to be Citigroup, and I did very well.
Sandy Weil was that's a big name.
Yeah, and anyway,
Wasn't
because
easy.
I was knocking on doors.
Took some balls to go knock on that door,
I was
though.
knocking on doors, and then after that, I ran into Henry Kravis by accident in Paris, all because I was in Paris, and then I ran Willis after that. So it was all because I played,
What's
in
the
traffic.
hardest thing you hit against, though, in your earlier part of your career? Was there a bump in the road that, where all of a sudden it was a little bit of a aha moment?
Yeah, I think that going back to the days of Wall Street, Italians were sent to the back office immediately. That's where the Italians went.
Really?
Yeah, and we talk about racism, or you talk about that sort of thing in this country, and divisiveness, etc. It exists forever, and I think that the best advice that I could have, and I was fortunate enough, to rise to a pretty high level on Wall Street, is that I don't care who you are, but if you're so good at what you do and you're so obvious about how good you are, nobody can choose you otherwise. And so I'm never going to put anybody in a position to have to make a choice. It's so clear that they got to choose you.
You just outworked everybody.
I just outworked them. I outharted them, and it wasn't because I was smarter, because there was a lot of people smarter than me, but they didn't work longer than me, and I outharted them. Nobody had a bigger heart than me.
Is your mantra? I'm just asking this, but I was thinking like if I was going to come up with like a slogan for you, it's do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Right.
Whatever. And you do what you do, but I think a lot of it has to do. We talk about this a lot, passion, and we talk about purpose, and we talk about, I think, all of the things that actually distinguish people over time, Brandon. And if you say that everybody's pretty smart, there's degrees of smart, but that's it. I think actually the thing that distinguishes you are all the things that you can't get an app for. There's no app on your phone for heart. There's no app for courage. There's no app for passion. There's no app for commitment. There's no app for that stuff. And those are the stuff that you got to have. And you hang around people that give you that. That's what's going to distinguish you. Because everybody these days understands technology. They understand all of this stuff. So at one point, what is it that's going to distinguish you? And it's all the things you can't build an app for, in my opinion.
I love that. Love that. And have any questions for Joe Plumeri? We're going to start rattling them off. We got some questions, Jess?
I know a couple people have asking, and we were wondering, in all of your experience on Wall Street and stuff like that, what was the most gratifying experience you had?
The most gratifying experience I ever had, and I had a lot of gratifying experiences, is, and I separate that from my biggest achievement. Because when people say, what was your biggest achievement? My answer is I haven't had my biggest achievement yet.
Your best days are not your yesterdays.
No, they're not. And that's a great way to put it. And I know that was in your blog, and that was great. Why get up in the morning if you already thought you had your biggest achievement?
But a lot of people are thinking that, though, Joe.
Nah. I got to tell you, I went to my college.
I got to tell you something. You just told me you were 74. I thought you were kidding.
No, I'm 74 years old.
But you could be like 54.
Yeah, whatever works. But I feel like I got a lot of energy.
How's going on? Where's that evaporator battery going on in there?
I don't know.
I love it.
It's passion. You get up in the morning, got to have purpose. And I got this as and then I'll answer the question. Last year, I went to my 50th college reunion. 50th, right? 50 years. I graduated from William and Mary.
I'm not looking forward to that, by the way.
1966. And so what they did was at 50 years, they have a tradition where you're now admitted into the old guard. So they had a commencement exercise to admit all my classmates into the old guard of William and Mary. And they asked me to give the commencement speech. And this was great. The whole weekend I'm there. I'm asking people, what do you do? And they look at me and say, what do you mean, what do I do? I'm retired. I said to one person, what do you do? And they said, I'm almost dead. I said, what are you, crazy? I said, you got a whole life to live. Find purpose. Find something you get excited about. And it was crazy. At the end of my speech, I got a bunch of people who had all yesterdays, as you say, great line, no tomorrows. If you got no tomorrows, every bad company that I ever parachuted into, everybody talked about yesterday. Nobody talked about tomorrow, which is the reason they were a bad company, which makes you a bad person. If you don't have a tomorrow and you don't have a purpose and you're not excited about getting up every day, you got to go revisit yourself.
You got to step outside yourself and have a conversation.
And you got to go revisit. That's exactly right.
Man.
But I want to answer the question. I love people to tell me this is impossible. You can't do that. I love that. And because it gives me a sense of purpose and it gives me a challenge. And way back in 2008, when the world was falling apart, I did a big deal, $2 billion deal. And I had a lot of space I needed in Chicago. And the only place that had a lot of space was the Sears Tower. And they were less than 60% occupied. And so the long story short is that I said I can make this deal, and I think I got a shot at changing the name from the Sears Tower to the Willis Tower, because Willis was the name of my company. Nobody knew who Willis was. They thought it was that kid, What's Up? Remember that show, What's Up, Willis? So I needed presence in the United States. So long story short, I negotiated $14.50 a square foot. Only took 2 floors, rented 2 floors. So the guy says, do we have a deal? I said, not exactly. He said, what do you mean? I got you $14.50 a square foot. You can't get that in New Rochelle, whatever. You can't get that.
No way.
So he says, what do you want now? I said, you know what the problem with this building is? I said, the name Sears is a jinx. They hadn't been in the building since 93, by the way. I said, because a terrorist attack, they think, what's the largest building in the Western Hemisphere at the time was the Sears Tower. So they're thinking the Sears Tower, change the name, change the whole thing. You'll get more people moving the building. So I got him to change the name to the Willis Tower. I never bought it. I just rented 2 floors. And I think that was by far.
I love that move.
That was one of the great judo moves of all time.
I like that move.
My opinion. because people told me I couldn't do it.
Couple more questions.
Yeah. Also, what would be your advice for somebody who might be a high school or college kid? Sort of like how you said, Brandon, try and meet these people. But if they're in school right now, would you say focus on your studies, try and find a mentor? What would be your focus?
I'd say, obviously, always concentrate on your studies. Education is very important. I'm not going to give the speech about education.
You're a pro-education.
Oh, there's no question about
No question.
that.
Me too.
But it's not about getting grades. It's about being curious. There's a big difference. If you're curious, then you're not challenged by school. You're not pressured by school. But being curious is another way of looking at education. If you're taking a history class, be curious about how we got here. Be curious about your environment. Why is that there? Why is that building? Just be curious. If you take education and replace it with curious, all of a sudden education becomes less of a bore and more of something that's exciting to you.
Because such education is the highest level of curiosity. Because that's ultimately what you're going to remember and what you're going to be interested in.
It deformalizes education and makes it part of who you are as a being. I'm always curious about that. I go to towns and I say, man, that building's cool. How'd it get here? Or that building's name, whatever, and who's he? And you educate yourself that way.
You know what I always say? I say, for me in school, I think the teachers just give all the. If I started a class, I would give all the answers to the midterm and finals on the first day. And I'd say, who here is curious to see how we get to those answers?
Exactly.
Here's the answers. I'm not going to try to trick you. If you take enough time, you'll know the answers. You can get an A. Who wants to know how we got to these answers?
That's terrific. I think we should start moving about that.
I mean, school. Let me tell you, school. I didn't fail in school. School failed me.
Go ahead.
They just want to constantly trick me. Should I read this? Should I read that? And if you're a good memory guy, if you're a good memory, you're like my wife has a great memory. My son, A's.
Right.
You know,
that's not learning.
That's not learning.
That's different.
Yeah.
And I think if you put kids, young people in the right environment, and you create that curiosity and
challenge,
and you have not a teacher, but you have somebody lead the curiosity course, whatever it's called, whether it's called history,
Curiosity
physics,
101.
Curiosity. Then all of a sudden, education
and
becomes
business
different.
101.
I urge young people to that question. Don't think of it as education because now you got to go to school and you got to do your homework. Think about the fact that I'm being curious about why this happened. Why is the sky blue? Why is the sun the way it is? What's going on in the world? And be curious about things. So I think that's number one. And number two, I think you got to have a sense of your feelings and be able to express those feelings. You have to be able to express feelings of joy. You got to feel, think, love, and cry every day.
So being like self-aware, knowing what's actually going on up
and not be afraid to express it. I tell people every day when I wrote this book a couple of years ago, Power of Being Yourself, I said, if you don't like to think, feel, cry, and laugh, don't read this book. Because those are the essentials of life. And you should do every one of those things every day.
Hold on, time out. Where are people picking up that book? I know you just wrote this book, but that was a powerful book. Where do you pick up that book?
I guess you can go on Amazon. You go to bookstores, but Amazon, you get
Love that book.
Power of Being Yourself.
Great stories. Great. Amazing. The path. I mean, that's what I love is when you get into the paths. I did a talk last night up at Syracuse. And I asked the kid, what's winning for you? He says, I want to be independently wealthy. I said, so, okay. That's fair. It's honest.
All right.
So tell me, when was the last time you made money? Explain to me how you make money. He says, well, I'm just a freshman. I haven't really made money yet. I'm like... I mean, there's thinking about what winning is, and there's doing what winning is. But, you know, obviously you're not going to be a multimillionaire, independently wealthy overnight, but you got to start by learning how to make $1. And that's what gets me a lot of times with the classrooms at college is the process stuff. It's good to learn the stuff, but how you get to the stuff, the process stuff. I think if the kid was curious about being a multimillionaire, it's great. But don't you want to learn how you do that?
Exactly.
And anybody who's done that will say, learn how to make $1. Learn how to make money. You can't make a lot of money until you learn how to make some money. Simple.
I think it goes to the issue, Brandon, of all of the things that I mentioned, which were the non-app stuff, I like to call them.
I love that. The heart. No app.
Things
love
you can't
that.
build an app for.
Yeah.
I think the one that is passion is popular with everybody. I'm a passionate guy. Imagination, cool. I mean, got to have imagination.
Creativity.
Got to have vision, all that stuff. But I think at the core of everything's purpose. I really think purpose hits it right where it should be.
How so?
If you have if you got a purpose, then your imagination is awakened, your vision is awakened, your commitment is awakened, your passion is awakened. You can't have all this stuff awakened without a purpose. My purpose, we were talking about addiction. My purpose was to make a difference in the world. My purpose was to have genuine concern for people. My purpose, everything I did, when I look back in it, I had a purpose which led to other things. But if you don't have a purpose, how could you have a commitment? Does the commitment come first and then you say to yourself, what are you committed to? Oh, I never thought of that. I got to have, it starts with purpose. Give me an imagination.
You completely messed me up now. Now you killed me. You killed me. Because I always felt commitment will lead you to passion. But now I'm thinking purpose will lead you to commitment. And then commitment will lead you to passion. And also an understanding. Purpose, understanding,
Purpose leads to imagination.
Yeah.
Purpose leads, imagination leads to vision. Vision leads to commitment. Commitment leads to passion. You got to start with purpose. If you don't have a purpose, nothing happens.
I have to rewrite all that now. That's like a whole nother twist
no,
on.
It's really cool.
I love that though.
I do the thing with burn the boats, but
love the burn the boats.
People ask me what commitment is, and I said the Vikings, which were invaders from the north, not the Minnesota Vikings. These were the brothers. And when they conquered, they were conquerors. And as soon as they landed their boats on a shore, they were conqueror. They got out of the boats. First thing they did was burn them. And they burned the boats because they wanted to understand that there was no turning back. There was no boat to run back to. So if there's no boat to run back to, you got to stay with plan A. There's no plan B, which is a terrific commitment. But that was commitment. But what was the commitment for? The purpose of conquering that country. If there was no purpose, then their commitment wouldn't exist.
I love that. By the way, I stole that Vikings concept from you. And in my fraternity at Syracuse, there's a Vikings helmet on the mantle in the living room. And for the most committed brother who's helped, who never looked back to make the house better, they get the Viking Award.
But they had a purpose of making the fraternity better,
best, yeah.
which is where the commitment came from. So I always think it starts with purpose.
I love that.
And the purpose has to have genuine concern for people as part of the purpose.
I love that. It's true.
Genuine
concern. When you think about being an entrepreneur, you think about taking your next steps. Like, it's great to have the big idea and the big effort, but these are the things that you really need underneath that to really push it forward. Yeah. And I think sometimes people miss that stuff.
Purpose is always first.
Stuff. A couple other questions?
You know what's interesting? I would just tell you an interesting story that made me think about all this. Yeah. You remember when, and we all remember 9/11, was a commission after 9/11 to determine what happened. And they created a big report. But what's interesting to me is that the name of the report that they created was a failure to imagine. So we never imagined that two planes could hit two buildings. If we imagined it, then we would have gone backwards and figured out how that could happen if we imagined it. So in the absence of imagining it, then there was no way to avoid it. And if we look back at what people wanted to do to us, they had a purpose. And their purpose was to unfortunately do something bad, and we never therefore imagined it. So it always goes back to the purpose.
But purpose will lead you to a lot of imagination, curiosity. It leads you to all kinds of
vision,
things. Love that.
Commitment, passion. But you got to have purpose, or all that stuff. Like the young student said to you, "I want to make a lot of money." He missed it completely. The purpose is to actually do something in your life that makes you feel like you're making a contribution. You're happy. It makes you be able to get up in the morning. It gives you a sense of worthwhileness.
Which breaking it down, just trying to figure out how to make a dollar will lead you to that curiosity of like, okay, now I got to find something. How am I going to make a dollar? Well, how can I help somebody, or how can I fix something, or how can I solve a problem? If I do a good job and think that through, maybe I can make a dollar.
First you become good at what you do because your purpose led you to become good at what you do. And once you become good at what you do, a natural course of things is to make yourself valuable to somebody. Value is what it's all about. It's not about money. Actually, price is only an issue in the absence of value, and you got to have value.
Love that. Price is only an issue in the absence of value.
value.
Love that. And your definition of value, I got to hit you with that because that's another beauty.
Value is the difference between what somebody can do for themselves and what you can do. If you have no ability to make a difference in somebody's life or business, then you are of no value, and therefore there's no reason to pay you, and you do not contribute to them whatsoever. The value is, and so if you want to just find it in your head for everybody, is that if I make no difference to somebody, then I have no value gap. There's no gap between what they can do for themselves and what I can do. But if I can come in and do something for somebody, there's a gap. The wider that gap, the more I can do that they can't do. The greater that gap is, the greater my value is. The greater my value is, the more I can charge. It's as simple as that, because people have no choice. I need this person, and they may not like what I charge, but I got to pay them because they can do a lot for me and my business. And value is not only a business thing; it's a people thing, and how you can make a difference in somebody's life, just as a friend.
As a friend, relationship,
Absolutely.
as a parent.
And just think of it that way.
I love my new line now, even when I'm sitting with my kids. What's winning? What's winning for you? What's the best possible thing that can happen for you?
Yeah.
Because
That's another way
it really is a conversation. When you think about it, you really stop and think. Because you always got a story about why something's not happening, why something's not going your way, or why you're stuck. But, if you keep thinking about what the best possible solution or best possible thing that can happen, what winning is.
Yeah, and I in companies that I've run,
some things.
I have companies I've run, and I think it also pertains to people. You can ask yourself the question, tell me what success is. What's success?
Well, what's success?
I think success is finding something that you enjoy that makes people better, makes society better, and has genuine concern for people's lives. And when I look at my life and I look at the things that I do with Make-A-Wish Foundation, I built a castle in New Jersey named after my kid, New York Law School, where we do a lot of social justice work, or we do with addiction. That's making a difference in people's lives. That's my purpose. And if I can do something that affects people in a positive way, that's success.
I love what you do at the New York Law School. Not a lot gets talked about that, but did you come up with that idea yourself? I just got to see. I mean, it's just. Where did you come up with that idea? Just because, you didn't. I'm just saying, I don't think you didn't get a law degree.
No, I went to New York Law School for 3 months.
So they call you back. I'm just trying to get a handle on that story.
I went there 3 months, and I'll do the short version because Brandon's prompting me. But 3 months I went there, and during that 3 months, because New York Law School was downtown, that's when I knocked on Sandy Weil's door.
Oh, that's how it got started.
That's how it started. So 3 months, I determined I wanted to be a broker, not a lawyer. So I quit New York Law School. Then 48 years later, after I was chairman of all these companies, all this kind of stuff,
But how do you come up with the idea of? So I get that, and to bring you back, you've been well, great. Maybe we get a donation from Joe. But let's get connected. You're a high profile guy, but how do you come up with that idea of building a courtroom in the damn school, and then for helping people that can't afford legal?
Because
where does that come from?
Because I have purpose, and my purpose is always thinking about how you help people, how you improve society. That's always on my mind. How things can be better. It's never about how I can make a buck. That's never on my mind.
Never?
No, it's always about how I can help people. Then from that, you build a process, when sometimes the process is a business or sometimes it's a center, at the law school. And I said to them, this law school is at the epicenter of, this city's the epicenter of immigration. My grandparents came from Sicily. I'm an immigrant. I'm a son of an immigrant. This country's full of immigrants. This is a silly discussion in this country, a silly discussion. And I want to make sure that New York was the epicenter of immigration, which goes to social justice, which goes to financial, justice, which goes to racial injustice, which goes to sexual injustice, gender injustice. I want to do something about all those injustices. And there's a lot of them out there. And I said, you're right now downtown New York. I can see the Statue of Liberty. Come on, let's do something here. So I said, why don't the law school have a law firm that then does all this free work for all of these injustices? And we created the Plumeri Center for Social Justice, Economic Opportunity. First year we were going, I built a courtroom, all this kind of stuff. And
That's
we've
pretty
done
cool. I've seen it.
yeah,
It's cool.
17,000 legal hours of free work. We did a lot of immigrants who come here, are sent here from Central America. Kids don't know where to go. They show up, and we represent them in court. We've had 3 innocence cases overturned. People have been in jail 20, 30 years. That it's just an injustice because nobody, bothered to help them. And then there's so many cases of veterans being abused that we've helped. I'm a veteran myself, and racial injustices and gender injustices. Somebody's got it. That's all purpose, man. That's purpose.
It's
It's
huge.
nothing to do with money.
Talking with Joe Plumeri, by the way, former CEO of Citi, Shearson Lehman, but also tremendous, someone who just gives and gives and gives. Trenton Thunder, one of the owners of Trenton Thunder, amongst a whole bunch of things. You don't have a lot of dull down moments, or do you?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't.
I'm not big on that either. I'm with you. I feel a little more normal because
I look at. I'm here once. I really believe in that cliche. This is not a dress rehearsal, but it's true. And I got a lot to do in the world. And even though somebody said to me, they said, what are you doing now? Because they think when you step down from being a CEO that you're dead. And I said, you realize this is, I don't know if you know this statistic. I'm going to give you a statistic. And
I'm ready.
You're going to use this.
No question.
Okay.
I'm stealing
most
everything.
Most games that are scored in a base, I'm a baseball freak.
Yes.
And most runs scored in a baseball game are in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings. And I am in the 7th. So I got the 7th, 8th, and 9th left. And so I'm going to score a lot of runs. This is my time to score a lot of runs. And I think the most epic event in all of sports is a walk-off home run. You hit the home run, the game is over, you throw the helmet in the air, it's over. Come on. So what I'm doing is I'm in the 7th inning. I got 8 and 9 to go. I'm going to score a lot of runs, and I'm going to have a walk-off home run. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to have a walk-off home run. That's what I do every day.
I love that. We'll take a couple questions with Joe Plumeri. Love that. A lot of business, a lot of guidance.
Just a question. Out of all the industries you've been in, like financial and the philanthropic stuff in sports, what's been your favorite industry you've been involved in?
That's hard because I ran a bank. I ran an insurance broker. I ran a financial services company, and I ran an investment bank. And I own baseball teams, and so it's really hard to differentiate all of the above. But I will tell you, forget about the businesses because they all had something different. And the philanthropy. But I think the joy that you get of having the opportunity to help people is my biggest joy, and it makes me feel good. It really does. Whether it's a Make-A-Wish kid who's terminally ill, who sees a castle.
Supersedes all the money.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think people get confused because they think the money really is going to take you to the promised land, but it's the joy in helping others that do.
Joy of helping others and having a purpose. And it comes back to you so many ways, Brandon. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel that you made somebody smile. You had a kid look up to you and who's in a wheelchair or has not been feeling good, and you look at their parents and you see them cry because you've done something. That's bigger than being a CEO of the biggest bank in the world. That's nothing like that.
Love that.
Nothing like that.
Couple more questions?
Yeah.
One more? We'll take one more question. By the way, this is not the last you've heard from us on the opioids. We're going to come back to that. You'll probably see Joe and I and a whole team that we're going to try to put together and start this movement.
If anybody's got any ideas how to start this movement.
How do they get a hold of you, by the way? Where's the best place to get a hold of you?
Just email me, joe@jplumeri.com. And I'd love to get the addiction version of Water Bucket Challenge. Help us out.
We're trying to come up with an idea.
Tell me how
Let's do
Brandon and I can do the
Yeah.
equivalent. That was done for ALS.
Yes.
and I want to do this for addiction. And tell me how we can create the purple version of the pink ribbon, but it's not a ribbon. And help me out here. I mean,
Like we're trying to come up with a theme, a motto, like rise up is one of the things
Right,
we've been
exactly.
talking about. But we're looking at some different ideas, and we're really looking at this thing as a widespread.
we need to get
And we need to nail
awareness
this
to
down.
break through the glass ceiling from awareness to do. You got awareness, it's got a ceiling now, and we break through the ceiling, and now we're doing something. And the challenge, whatever we can do to get people to rise up and start a movement is what's going to take care of this problem, because this problem is the death,
Yeah.
okay, of this country.
And it's not getting better.
I love when you talk about the glass ceiling. That's why maybe rise up could be our mantra. 'Cause
Rise up through
is really
that
what we
ceiling.
need.
Rise up through that ceiling.
Yeah, I love that.
And do something.
What do you think the next steps are for sort of pushing out that message? Do you think it's just awareness? Do you think it's taking steps like legislatively? What do you think's or awareness
I think
in
it's
schools?
all of the above. I think, and how do you handle all of the above? I think you go into a city, not a big enough city to make a difference, but small enough to handle it, and you take every aspect of the city.
Touch it.
The mayor, the police chief, the policemen, the teachers, the
Principal.
the principals, the parents, and they all raise their hand and say enough. We had enough. No more parents are going to bury children, and all these kids are going to have a shot at leading a full life. That's what needs to happen. And if you get one of those cities that's actually successful in saying enough, and everybody does their part at the enough movement, another city will do it. And then another city will do it. And another city will do it until it becomes the fabric. Movements start, as you know, Brandon, from the bottom up. Not because Joe Plumeri, said to start a movement. Movements start from the bottom.
Okay. If you're with us, we want to hear from you. Feedback, ideas, please, we want to hear from you. Joe, I could go all day with you. I'm not kidding. I
thank
love
you. This is
talking with
great.
you. I'm sorry we didn't get to a lot of your calls, but we'll be back. We'll be back. We're going to take some business calls.
Anytime.
Because Project X is important. We want to help you out there with your ideas. But the opioids is a big issue, and I wanted to tackle it today. Tomorrow we're coming back with a really cool sneaker idea. A little props out to my man Gary V. If you haven't bought his sneaker, he's launching that today. Good luck, Gary. I just bought my pair. I got to have a pair of sneakers. I didn't get a free pair. But
I'd
that's
like
okay.
to see those sneakers.
I want to go see what he's got. So I bought a pair of Gary V's, right? Size 13?
Yeah.
Anyway,
They
good
run-
luck. Tomorrow we're coming up with a really cool sneaker idea. We'll be right here tomorrow live with Project X. If you got an idea, message in. You can come on the phone with us. We'll walk you through it. Joe, it's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you soon.